Still playing store on the internet? Dad laughed at Christmas dinner, holding up his wine glass like he was making a toast. Mom sighed from across the table. Seriously, Morgan. When are you going to get a real job? My sister Bethany flipped through Fortune magazine half listening. Then she froze. Her face went completely white. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." The magazine fell from her hands. Entrepreneur of the Year. How she built a $4.2 billion empire. The presents stopped being opened. I was 8 years old when I learned that Bethany could do no wrong. She'd gotten a C+ on her math test, but Mom framed it anyway. "You tried so hard, sweetheart." Meanwhile, I'd brought home straight A's and a note from my teacher about my science project winning the district competition. Dad glanced at my report card for exactly 3 seconds. "Good. Now go set the table." Bethany was 3 years older, confident, beautiful in that effortless way that made everything she did seem important. I was the quiet one, the one who spent hours in my room reading business magazines I'd bought with my allowance. At 10 years old, I was studying logistics models. At 12, I was teaching myself basic coding. "Morgan's in her room again," Mom would say like it was a character flaw. "Bethany's at volleyball practice with actual friends." When I was 15, I started my first online business. Nothing fancy. I bought wholesale jewelry, photographed it nicely, and sold it on early marketplace platforms. I made $3,200 in 6 months. I was so proud. I showed my parents the bank statement. Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "Internet money isn't real money, Morgan. When you get a real job at a real company, then we'll talk about success." Bethany was 17 then, already dating the son of Dad's business partner. "That's cute," she said, not meanly, but with that particular kind of dismissal that somehow hurt worse than cruelty. "Like a lemonade stand, but online." I stopped showing them anything after that. When I was 19 and in college, I built my second business, a dropshipping operation focused on sustainable home goods. I worked from 6 a.m. to midnight most days, juggling classes and customer service and supplier negotiations. I made $47,000 in the first year. By year 2, I'd hit $180,000 in revenue. Meanwhile, Bethany graduated with a communications degree and immediately got hired at Dad's investment firm. Not because she'd applied. Because Dad created a position for her. Director of Client Relations, Mom announced at Sunday dinner, beaming. $65,000 a year to start. Can you believe it? I was sitting right there. My business had just cleared $200,000 in annual revenue. I was 21 years old. Nobody asked me anything. At 23, I sold that second business for $1.2 million. I didn't tell them. Instead, I took that money and built something bigger. I'd identified a massive gap in the market. Small businesses needed better inventory management software that didn't cost $50,000 per year or require a computer science degree to operate. I built it. Simple interface. Powerful backend. Subscription model at $79 per month that could scale to $299 for larger operations. I called it inventory flow. The first year we had 340 clients. Year 2, 2,800 clients. Year 3, 18,000 clients. By year 5, we had 94,000 active subscribers across 47 countries. I'd brought on a development team, a sales director, customer success managers. We'd raised zero outside capital. I owned 100% of the company. The business was valued at $340 million. I personally took home $15 million per year in distributions after reinvestment and salaries. I was 29 years old. My parents still thought I played store on the internet. I'd learned to keep my answers vague. "How's work?" they'd ask at obligatory family dinners. "Fine. Busy." "Still doing that online thing?" "Yes." They'd nod, bored already, and turn to Bethany. "Tell us about the Henderson account." Bethany had recently made junior partner at Dad's firm. She'd bought a BMW. She'd gotten engaged to Trevor, who worked in medical device sales and wore expensive suits. Their wedding was set for June at the country club, $85,000 budget, fully funded by our parents. When I'd gotten quietly married to James 2 years earlier, a simple ceremony at a vineyard we'd rented for the weekend, I hadn't even told them until 3 weeks later. "You got married?" Mom's voice on the phone was flat. "To that programmer you were seeing?" Software architect, I'd corrected quietly. Yes. Well, I suppose congratulations are in order. She'd sounded like I'd told her I'd bought new dish towels. James was perfect for me. Calm, brilliant, understood the business because he'd built his own successful cybersecurity consulting firm. His company revenue was around $8 million annually. Combined, we were doing exceptionally well. My parents had met him twice. Both times, Dad had asked him if he'd ever considered a real corporate position. The invitation to Christmas dinner had come via group text. Mom, family dinner December 24th, 6 p.m. Bethany and Trevor have big announcement. Bethany, can't wait for everyone to celebrate with us. Party popper. Dad, proud moment for the family. I typed back, I'll be there. Nobody responded. When James and I arrived at my childhood home, Bethany's BMW was already in the driveway, along with Trevor's Lexus. My Tesla, which I'd bought without fanfare 2 years ago, looked almost too understated next to their vehicles. Inside, the house smelled like Mom's signature prime rib. The dining room table was set with the good china. Bethany and Trevor were already seated, both holding champagne flutes. Morgan. Bethany stood to hug me, and it was warm, genuine even. We weren't enemies. She'd never been cruel on purpose. She just never looked past what our parents had decided about me. You look good. James, good to see you. Dad shook James's hand with that firm grip he used to establish dominance. Still doing the computer security thing? Yes, sir, James said evenly. Business is strong. Good, good. Dad had already lost interest. Bethany, show them the projections you put together for the Whitmore account. We sat. Mom brought out appetizers, brie and crackers, shrimp cocktail, things I remembered from every holiday dinner growing up. So, Dad said once we'd all been served drinks. Your mother and I have some announcements tonight, and so do Bethany and Trevor. Bethany was glowing. We're pregnant. She put her hand on Trevor's. 12 weeks. Due in June. Mom actually had tears in her eyes. Our first grandchild. I smiled. Congratulations. That's wonderful. It was wonderful. I meant it. Bethany would be a good mother. And, Dad continued, we've decided to make Bethany full partner at the firm. Youngest partner in company history. She's earned it. Trevor raised his glass. To my brilliant wife. Everyone clinked glasses. James and I joined in. Then Dad turned to me almost as an afterthought. Still playing store on the internet, Morgan? He laughed. Not meanly. Just dismissively. Like he was asking if I still collected stamps. Mom sighed, that particular sigh that meant she was disappointed but trying to be supportive. Seriously, Morgan. When are you going to get a real job? You're 31 years old. Bethany's building a career, starting a family. You're still doing whatever it is you do all day. I set down my fork. I'm happy with my work. But what is it exactly? Trevor asked, genuinely curious. Like, do you sell things? Is it like Amazon? Software, I said simply. Business management software. Dad made a dismissive sound. Tech bubble stuff. Remember the dot-com crash? That's going to happen again. Real wealth is in real businesses. Asset management, real estate, tangible value. Bethany was flipping through a Fortune magazine she'd brought in from the living room. I was reading this earlier, she said. They have this feature about entrepreneurs under 40 who... She stopped. Her face drained of color. Beth. Trevor touched her arm. You okay? He was staring at the magazine. Her hands started trembling. Oh my God, she whispered. Then louder, oh my God. What they didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that inventory flow had exploded in the past 18 months. We'd been approached by 3 major venture capital firms offering to buy minority stakes at a $1.8 billion valuation. I turned them all down. Then a Fortune 500 logistics company had offered to acquire us for $4.2 billion in cash and stock. I'd accepted. The deal had closed 8 weeks ago. My payout, after taxes and setting aside funds for my team's bonuses, $2.8 billion. $2.8 billion. I'd kept the same team, stayed on as CEO for a 3-year transition period at a $15 million annual salary, and maintained creative control over product development. The acquisition had been featured in TechCrunch, Bloomberg, and The Wall Street Journal. Forbes had done a profile. And 3 weeks ago, Fortune had named me Entrepreneur of the Year for the Under 40 category. The magazine issue had come out 2 days ago. James knew this moment was coming. We'd even discussed it in the car on the way over. They're going to find out eventually, he'd said. I know. You don't owe them a dramatic reveal. I know that too. But here we were. The business I'd built had started with that childhood fascination with logistics. I remembered being 12, watching a documentary about warehouse management and thinking, this is so inefficient. Someone should fix this. So I did. Inventory flow had started small. I'd coded the first version myself, working 16-hour days in our one-bedroom apartment. James had supported us on his salary while I took no income for the first 8 months. When we got our first paying client, a small bookstore in Oregon, I'd literally cried. By month 12, we had enough revenue for me to pay myself $40,000 a year. By month 18, I'd hired our first developer. By year 2, we had an office, just 1,200 square feet, but it was ours. The breakthrough came when a regional restaurant chain with 45 locations implemented our system and reduced their inventory waste by 34% in the first quarter. They'd posted about it on social media. Within a week, we had 200 demo requests. I'd scaled carefully. No flashy spending. No fancy office downtown. I'd kept our team lean, our burn rate low, our focus sharp. While other startups were burning through millions in VC funding on ping-pong tables and craft beer kegs, we were profitable from year 2 onward. The fortune I'd built wasn't from hype. It was from solving a real problem for real businesses and doing it better than anyone else. My team was 53 people. I knew all their names, their kids' names, their career goals. When the acquisition went through, I'd structured the deal to include $94 million in retention bonuses for them. Everyone who'd been with the company for more than 2 years became a millionaire. Our receptionist, who'd been with us since year 1, got $2.3 million. The acquiring company CEO had told me in the negotiation, we're not buying the software. We're buying your methodology and your team's culture. Don't change what works. I still drove the same Tesla. James and I still lived in the same house. Though it was a nice house, a $2.8 million property in a good neighborhood that we'd bought 18 months ago. I still wore simple clothes, still preferred reading to parties, still avoided attention. The fortune feature had been the first real public attention, and I'd only agreed to it because the exposure would help my team's next ventures. The interview had been straightforward. They'd asked about my methodology, my philosophy, my background. I'd mentioned growing up in a family that didn't understand what I did. The journalist had found that compelling. She titled her section of the piece, Building an Empire While No One Was Watching. The cover photo was professional but understated. Me in a black blazer standing in our office with the caption, Entrepreneur of the Year, How She Built a $4.2 billion empire. That magazine was now in Bethany's shaking hands. Entrepreneur of the Year, Bethany read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. How she built a $4.2 billion empire. He turned the magazine around. The cover photo was clear. Professional. Unmistakably me. Dad's fork clattered to his plate. Mom's hand went to her throat. Trevor leaned forward. Is that? Morgan. Bethany's voice cracked. This is you. You sold your company for $4.2 billion. I took a sip of water. The article is well researched. You. Dad stood up from the table. You sold a business for billion with AB. The acquisition closed in October, I said calmly. It was in the Wall Street Journal. Mom's face had gone completely pale. You're the Morgan Chin in this article. CEO of Inventory Flow, the revolutionary inventory management platform that's changing how businesses operate? Yes. Bethany was reading frantically now. Chin started the company 6 years ago with zero outside funding, building it into a juggernaut with 94,000 active subscribers across 47 countries. Her personal stake in the $4.2 billion acquisition, $2.8 billion. The room went completely silent. James quietly reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. Trevor broke the silence. $2.8 billion? Before taxes, I corrected. Dad sat back down heavily. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at him evenly. You never asked. Every time you asked about my work, you called it playing store on the internet, or asked when I'd get a real job. But Mom's voice was faint. We thought it was just a hobby. It employed 53 people, I said. All of whom became millionaires when the deal closed. I structured the sale to prioritize their financial security. Bethany was still reading. Chin is known in Silicon Valley for her unconventional approach. No venture capital, no flashy spending, no press coverage until the acquisition was announced. She built her empire while working from a modest 3,200 square foot office and driving a 2020 Tesla. She looked up at me. You've been a billionaire for 2 months and you didn't say anything? Would you have believed me if I'd just told you? No one answered. Dad's face had gone from pale to red. This doesn't make sense. How could you? I'm in finance. I understand business. If you'd built something worth billions, we would have known. You would have known if you'd asked, I said quietly. Or if you'd read TechCrunch. Or Bloomberg. Or the Wall Street Journal. Or Forbes. The Forbes profile came out in September. Mom's hands were trembling. Morgan, we didn't know. I'm aware. Trevor was still processing. So when we were talking about Bethany's salary at the firm, you were making what exactly? My salary was $8 million annually before the acquisition, I said. Now it's $15 million for the next 3 years as part of the transition agreement. Dad's champagne glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the hardwood floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. Bethany set the magazine down carefully like it might explode. The article says you funded a scholarship program for women in STEM. $50 million. $52 million, I corrected. It's administered through MIT and Stanford. We received 8,400 applications in the first cycle. Mom started crying. Not graceful tears. Actual sobbing. Why didn't you tell us? Why would you let us think? Think what? I asked, my voice still calm. That I was wasting my time? That I needed to get a real job? That Bethany was the successful one. That's not fair, Bethany said, but her voice was uncertain. Isn't it? I looked at her. You're a junior partner making $180,000 a year at Dad's firm. That's genuinely impressive. I'm proud of you. But at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, Dad spent 40 minutes explaining your promotion to everyone. When I mentioned I'd hired our 20th employee, he asked if I was finally going to become profitable. We didn't know, Dad said, but his voice had no strength behind it. No, I agreed. You didn't. Because you never asked. James spoke for the first time since the magazine appeared. The article mentions that Morgan's parents were unaware of her success until the acquisition was announced. The journalist asked Morgan about that. Do you want to know what she said? Everyone stared at him. She said, I built my business for myself, not for external validation. The people who needed to know. My team, my clients, my husband, they knew. That was enough. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Mom's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it reflexively. Her face went even paler, if that was possible. It's Catherine Henderson, she whispered. Catherine was one of Mom's closest friends, also from their country club circle. She's texting about. She's asking if the Morgan Chin in Fortune magazine is my daughter. Bethany's phone started buzzing too. Then Trevor's. Then Dad's. It's going viral, Trevor said, scrolling through his phone. There's a LinkedIn post with 40,000 likes. This is what real entrepreneurship looks like. Building value quietly while everyone doubts you. Dad's phone rang. He looked at the screen. It's Richard Whitmore. One of his major clients. He answered. Richard, hello. We could hear Richard's booming voice through the phone. Jim, just saw the Fortune article. Your daughter. The Morgan Chin. Why didn't you tell me your daughter built Inventory Flow? We've been using their software for 3 years. Game changer for our operations. Dad's face cycled through several emotions. Yes, we're very proud. Proud? Jim, you should have been shouting it from the rooftops. I'm telling everyone at the club tomorrow. We need to do lunch. I want to pick your brain about the industry. Must run in the family, that business sense. Dad hung up slowly. He wants to have lunch, he said blithely. To talk about business sense that runs in the family. The immediate consequences began within hours. Mom's phone didn't stop ringing. Every friend, every country club acquaintance, every distant relative. all calling to congratulate her on having such a successful daughter. I don't know what to tell them, Mom said, still crying. Everyone's asking why we didn't mention it. Nancy Pritchard said she read the article and it mentioned we didn't know. She asked if we were estranged. Are we? I asked simply. No one answered. Dad's phone was worse. Business contacts, golf buddies, everyone. And beneath the congratulations was a question they didn't ask but clearly wondered. How did you not know? Bethany was sitting very still. Trevor, she said quietly. We should go. Beth, I said. She looked at me. Congratulations on the baby. Genuinely. That's wonderful news. Her eyes filled with tears. Morgan, I didn't know. I swear if I'd known. I know, I said. And I did. Bethany had never been deliberately cruel. She just never questioned the family narrative. They left 20 minutes later. James and I stayed mostly because we wanted to make clear that this wasn't a dramatic exit. This was just the truth finally visible. Dad sat at the table, the Fortune magazine open in front of him. The article mentions you started this when you were 23. Yes. We thought. I told you it was a phase. You did. Morgan. His voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us? I considered my answer carefully. At first because I wanted to prove I could do it. Then because you'd made it clear you weren't interested. By the time it became something worth mentioning, I'd built a life where your opinion didn't define my success. Mom flinched. That came out harsher than I meant it, I said. But it's true. I built this for me. Not to prove anything to you. Not to earn your approval. Just because I saw a problem and wanted to solve it. The article says you turned down venture capital, Dad said, still reading. Multiple offers. $1.8 billion valuation. I didn't want to answer to investors. That's. He looked up. That's actually smart business. I know. The escalating consequences came over the next week. Dad's business partner called him, excited about Bethany's connection to me through the family. We should leverage this. Get Morgan to speak at our investor conference. Dad had to explain that his daughter wasn't taking his calls. Because after that Christmas dinner I'd set boundaries. I'd sent a family email, carefully worded. I love you all, but I need time to process the family dynamics that have been in place for most of my life. I'm not angry. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply protecting my peace. When and if I'm ready to rebuild our relationship, I'll reach out. I need you to respect this boundary. Mom had called 17 times the first day. I didn't answer. Dad had shown up at my office. My assistant, following my instructions, had politely told him I was unavailable and offered to schedule a meeting for 4 weeks out. He'd left shell-shocked. Bethany had sent a long text message. Morgan, I'm so sorry. I never realized. I was so caught up in my own life that I didn't see yours. The baby news, I want you to be part of this. Not because of who you are or what you've accomplished, but because you're my sister. When you're ready, I'm here. I'd appreciated that. I'd sent back. Thank you. I need some time, but I do want to be part of the baby's life. Let's talk in January. The final consequences manifested when the social embarrassment became complete. Dad's golf club friends kept asking about me. One of them had been at a conference where I'd given a keynote speech 3 months ago. Your daughter is brilliant. That speech about sustainable growth strategies. I took 20 pages of notes. Dad hadn't known I gave keynote speeches. Mom's book club had started reading business biographies. Someone brought in a recent biography about female entrepreneurs. I had a chapter. Your daughter is in this, they'd said. Did you know she mentors young women in tech? Mom hadn't known that either. The worst came when Dad's firm landed a major client, a tech company looking to expand. They specifically requested to work with Dad because his daughter revolutionized their industry, and they wanted that family business perspective. In the meeting, the client had asked, so what's it like having Morgan Chin as a daughter? Do you consult with her on our tech strategy? Dad had to admit he had no contact with me. The client had looked uncomfortable. The deal nearly fell through. 6 weeks after Christmas, I agreed to meet Mom for coffee. She came alone. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. She'd been crying, I could tell. Thank you for seeing me, she said. I nodded. I've been thinking, she started, then stopped. No. I've been doing more than thinking. Your father and I have been in therapy. Individual and couples. That surprised me. Okay. The therapist asked me why I thought Bethany was more successful than you. Mom's voice was steady but pained. I told her all of Bethany's accomplishments. The therapist asked what you'd accomplished. I realized I couldn't answer. Not because you hadn't accomplished anything, but because I'd never asked. I sipped my coffee. Morgan, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to suddenly want family dinners again. But I need you to know that I see it now. How we treated you. How we dismissed everything you worked for. How we made you feel invisible in your own family. I appreciate that, I said quietly. The Fortune article mentioned your scholarship fund. $52 million. When I read that, Morgan, that's more than our house is worth. More than your father's made in his entire career. And you just gave it away. It's money that can change lives. Women who wouldn't otherwise have access to education in STEM fields. That felt important. Mom's eyes filled with tears. You're a better person than I taught you to be. I shook my head. You taught me resilience even if you didn't mean to. You taught me to build something for myself, not for external validation. Those aren't bad lessons. But we should have seen you, she whispered. We should have asked. We should have known. Yes, I agreed simply. You should have. We sat in silence for a moment. What happens now? Mom asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm not cutting you out of my life. But I'm also not pretending the past didn't happen. I've built a life I'm proud of with people who see me clearly. James, my team, my chosen family. That's my foundation. You and Dad and Bethany, you can be part of my life, but you're not the center of it anymore. She nodded slowly. That's fair. Bethany texted me yesterday. She's having a girl. She told me. Mom managed a small smile. She wants to name her Morgan. Middle name. That caught me off guard. That's unexpected. She said she wants her daughter to grow up knowing that success isn't loud. That the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest. She said she wants her daughter to be like you. I felt something crack in my chest just a little. I'd like to be part of that, I said quietly. The baby's life. On my terms. Whatever terms you need, Mom said immediately. Morgan, we're going to do better. I know that sounds empty right now. But we're trying. I believed her. Not because I thought everything would magically fix itself, but because I could see she meant it. 2 weeks later, I had dinner with Bethany. She was showing now, glowing with pregnancy hormones and nervous energy. I'm really sorry, she said for the 50th time. I know. You've said that. But I mean it. I know that too. She twisted her napkin. I keep thinking about all the times I didn't ask about your work. All the times I just assumed you were doing okay, nothing special. I was so wrapped up in my own world. You were living your life. That's normal. But you're my sister. I am, I agreed. And you're going to be a mom. That's incredible, Beth. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I really do want you to be part of this. Aunt Morgan. Not because you're famous now, but because you're my sister. And I'm really proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago. You're saying it now, I said. That counts. 3 months later, I attended my niece's baby shower. Dad was there, quieter than usual, watching me with something like wonder. Mom was attentive without being overbearing. Bethany introduced me to her friends without mentioning fortune or money or business. Just, this is my sister, Morgan. Felt like a beginning. Not a reset. You can't erase 31 years of family dynamics. But a beginning. I left the shower early. I had a board meeting the next morning, and James and I drove home through the evening traffic. That was good, he said. It was, I agreed. Think it'll stick? The changes. I don't know. But I'm not waiting around to find out. I've got a life to live. He smiled. Billionaire CEO by day, auntie by weekend? Something like that. My phone buzzed. A text from Bethany. Thank you for coming. Meant everything. I texted back. Wouldn't have missed it. Love you. And I meant it. Because here's what I'd learned. Success wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It wasn't about the moment they finally saw you. It was about building something meaningful while no one was watching, and then, when they finally noticed, being secure enough in yourself that their validation or lack thereof didn't define you. I'd built a $4.2 billion empire in the quiet spaces of my life, while my family focused elsewhere. The revelation hadn't changed who I was. It had just forced them to see what had always been there. And now, driving home with my husband with a niece on the way and a company I loved still innovating, still growing, I realized I didn't need their approval anymore. I had something better. I had myself.